Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, what is Parliament doing about the human rights situation in the country, considering numerous reports that all is not well? Several reports by both local and international organizations specializing in human rights issues continue to observe that Uganda needs to urgently deal with the worsening situation of human rights. These reports have repeatedly implicated state agencies like the police, the army, and the prison services as leading perpetrators, although there are several abuses committed by some private members of the public. Such abuses have ranged from torture, deprivation of life, detention beyond the constitutional period of 48 hours, and limitation of political rights and freedoms, to mention but a few. The Uganda Human Rights Commission has tabled before Parliament several reports, but to the dismay of the Commission and human rights activists, many of these reports have not been debated. This prompted Parliament to put in place a separate committee to deal with only matters of human rights, and this committee has already embarked on its work, although some people are skeptical on whether it can deliver. The respect of human rights is a fundamental pillar for good governance and stability, and many people have advised that in order for the country to fully turn away from its brutal past, human rights must be respected and protected. Despite this importance, Uganda still faces slowdowns in dealing with violations. And so on Spectrum tonight we ask, what is the position of Parliament on the human rights situation in the country? And considering the challenges today and in the past, how will the Committee of Parliament on Human Rights help in this aspect? Our guest tonight, Honorable Jovah Kamateeka, Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights. You're most welcome, Honorable Jovah.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Miss Margaret Sekagya, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights, defenders, and Executive Director of the Human Rights Centre-Uganda. You're most welcome, Madam Sekagya.
Thank you very much. Good evening to the viewers.
Viewers, because we're also on the internet, you can get us a video of Spectrum off YouTube. Madam Sekagya, how seriously does the government take its human rights record? This government?
That's a very difficult question. How serious does the government take human rights? I'll start by giving my history at the Uganda Human Rights Commission. We did make a number of reports enlisting the situation of human rights in the country and giving serious recommendations as to what the government should do. And of course, if you read the human rights report, the Uganda Human Rights Report, in many instances, the problem is implementation of the recommendations which are given by the Uganda Human Rights Commission. The other aspect is on violators. If a person violates human rights, what are the existing mechanisms to deal with such an issue? Fortunately, the courts are still doing work on hearing cases, on getting cases. However, we still see areas of impunity. We still see areas of non-conclusion of cases where violations have taken place. So I still feel that the government needs to do more. Much as we have the courts in place, we have the Uganda Human Rights Commission in place, it still needs to do more to ensure that violations of human rights are dealt with.
How about Parliament? Does Parliament as a legislative arm of this government take these matters seriously?
We are now having this committee in place, and I think Jovah will be able to tell us how far they've gone. Our hope our aspiration is that the putting in place of the Human Rights Committee, which originally was a recommendation from the Uganda Human Rights Commission and other organizations, is going to bring hope to the people that more will be done. One, on addressing issues of impunity. Two, on dealing with areas where we have, for example, errant soldiers, errant policemen who violate human rights with impunity.
Honorable Kamateeka, talk to us about Parliament. You chair this important committee. Give us a little bit about its history and its mandate.
Parliament takes these issues. You asked, does Parliament take these issues very seriously? Parliament does take these issues very seriously. That's why the Committee on Human Rights was created. Margaret Sekagya has mentioned that the Human Rights Commission was making reports, but after it was you who mentioned, unfortunately, they were not being handled with emergency. This is because the reports were being handled by the Committee on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, which was overwhelmed with work. And so there was need to create a Committee on Human Rights to deal specifically with issues of human rights, and most especially with the reports of the Human Rights Commission. So, at the beginning of last year, at the beginning of this session of Parliament, the Committee on Human Rights was created.
And what is its mandate?
The mandate, first of all, is that the committee will analyze, examine all business before Parliament to ensure that it is human rights compliant. Then the committee will examine the reports, study the reports of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and hold government accountable to implementation of the recommendations made therein, and also hold government accountable for the implementation of international conventions and obligations that Uganda is party to.
Have you set out targets for yourself?
There are targets, yes. For example, for this period, we would want to look at the Uganda Human Rights Commission reports ranging from 2008, the year 2008 to 2011. We are hoping that we will meet with all the government ministries and departments concerned in the reports, and once we have concluded that, also maybe hold field visits and go physically check on the implementation, and go physically check on places of detention to see the conditions of those places, and then we can submit our report to Parliament.
Madam Sekagya, that should make you happy, but perhaps before we get your comment there, maybe you don't want to celebrate a little bit too early. Can you give us a profile of human rights abuse? When you talk about human rights abuse, what does that
mean? Human rights consist of civil, political rights, economic, social and cultural rights. From the angle of the civil and political rights, we talk about abuses where you have deprivation on the freedom of assembly, association, expression, opinion, and those are political rights. And then on the economic and social and cultural rights, of course, we talk about issues of health, issues of education, right to food, right to access drugs. And so, of course, especially in the angle of economic, social and cultural rights, the issues we still have, the violations we still have, which everybody talks about, and it's in the papers. I don't need to elaborate it so much, is the issue of the right to health, the issue of access to medical medical care by everyone, affordable or provided by the government, the issue of delivery services, roads and all that, so that the farmer can deliver his goods to the destination. So we still have those challenges. We still have civil society and other organizations which are limited in areas of freedom of assembly, where the police have been stopping them from protesting about corruption, for example. So those are still there. Access to justice, delay in administration of justice, the backlog of cases, the issues of detention beyond 48 hours are still issues within Uganda, and quite a number of other issues. As we make progress in establishing the institutions, we have to ensure that we get these institutions resourced and empowered to be able to deal with the violations. Can we get the Uganda Human Rights Commission's recommendations implemented? Can we get a committee of parliament be able to deal with those issues? Will it be resourced well? So even the issue of deprivation of resources to the various institutions like the courts, can we get the courts incapacitated to have judges to deal with the cases? All those are issues which affect the whole rule of law in the country, and I would say that where the government still needs to address these issues, and we need the committee to be able to raise these issues, and that's our hope, that the committee is established, that all these things will also be addressed at the level of Parliament.
Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. What is Parliament doing about the human rights situation in the country, considering numerous reports that all is not well? Our guest, Honorable Jovah Kamateeka, Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights, and Ms. Margaret Sekagya, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders, and Executive Director of the Uganda Human Rights Centre-Uganda. Talk to us, Honorable Kamateeka. Can you briefly give us a profile of Uganda's human? How has it been going since 1986 when this government came to power? Which direction is the curve going down, or how is it level?
That's really a tall order, but clearly, as Mrs. Sekagya has pointed out, there have been successes, there are still problems, but what is important is that there is progress, that the government is trying to put measures in place to improve on the situation. For example, when you look at the roads, we now have a road equipment per district, and so we hope that the road situation will improve. Farmers will be able to take their produce. When you look at the delivery of services, access to health is still a big problem. We are hoping that government will continue to push additional funding to the health sector, but recently the President committed himself at a conference in London to give an extra $500 million to reproductive health and to improve in that area. Backlog of cases is still a problem. Access to justice, because recently we went to Gulu as a committee, and we were visiting the facilities. In Gulu there is a modern prison facility, but unfortunately it is so heavily overcrowded. Reason, no resident judge, and of course other reasons. So there has been improvement. the creation of the Human Rights Committee in Parliament, if government did not have the goodwill to do it, it would have been difficult for Parliament to do it. And I can assure you that for those government departments which we have met with, we have seen goodwill, and we have seen a steady implementation of the recommendations made by the Human Rights Commission. And having the Uganda Human Rights Commission in place in itself, which was the creation of this government, is a big plus. Recently, the Human Rights Commission was acknowledged as the best human rights institution that has made impact in a human rights situation in the whole of Africa. Yeah, this has been done with the support of government. But having said that, the Human Rights Commission needs to be facilitated further, so that they are doing a good job, but they need to be facilitated so that they can do a better job. We need these human rights abuses to be highlighted so that we can find solutions to them, we can deal with them, that our people may be able to enjoy their human rights.
Well, talk to us about what you would expect from the public. You are there. How do you work? What can you expect from the general public? What can they do to help further your work?
The general public can help by rendering support, giving information where, for example, there are abuses, there are so many players, there are civil society organizations. They can approach the Human Rights Commission, they can approach us. So, as civil society, as members of the public, they need to know their rights first of all. They need to know their rights, they need to demand for their rights. If they don't demand for their rights from government, government may not so easily just give. So you need an enlightened public to demand for their rights. Yes. But secondly, I'd like the Ugandan public also to be sensitive to being to respecting law and order. When a policeman approaches you and you've done something wrong, don't run. You need to present yourself so that they can tell you what is it you have done wrong, and then you can put it right. But we need that the people respect, for example, the police, and that the police respects the people. We need to create this kind of respect and confidence. Otherwise, people just run, and then the police runs after them, and you have a bad situation getting worse. So I would like that the members of the public begin to be law-abiding and to respect the police. But at the same time, I'm calling upon the police also to, while we appreciate the challenges that they go through, they should operate. Recently, the IGP had occasion to tell them that they should always try and operate within the law.
Yes.
When you are arresting someone, be mindful of the dignity and respect of that person.
Not throw them on the back of the pickup or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, there have been previous committees that have handled some of the matters. BioPRICA's Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, those are human rights issues. They have the power of the High Court. They made recommendations. They've not been followed. What makes you think viewers are going to be listened to?
I want to believe that there is goodwill. There is goodwill within the government. I'm a member of the NRM, and I want to believe, and I do believe, that there is goodwill. Because, for example, one of our responsibilities is to hold government accountable to the implementation of the recommendations as made by the Commission.
Right.
We have met with some of these government departments, and they have showed us goodwill to go and implement. And we
you believe they will?
There is evidence that they are implementing.
All right.
So I believe that they will implement.
This is Spectrum Radio 1. We'll go for a break. We'll be back to the station.
Uganda Communications Commission is currently conducting nationwide mandatory SIM card registration. Register your SIM card in a few easy steps. Visit your telecom operator's customer care center or any other designated registration center and provide your phone number, a copy of a valid ID or any other valid ID with accompanying photographs such as a passport, driver's permit, voter's card, or a letter from your LC. Information on your physical address or residence will also be required. SIM card registration protects mobile phone users from incidences of fraud, incitement, terrorism, and hate messages, among others. Please note that SIM card registration is mandatory, and those who fail to register risk having their SIM cards deactivated. All information shall remain confidential. Let's make communication safe. Register your SIM card today.
So I'm chilling at home with my crew. The boys are waiting to watch the game on the telly, but the chicks want to go to the beach. So how do we play it? A glance across the room. Eye contact is made. A plan is hatched. Pete will get some sand. Lots of it. Jeff will take care of the deco, Tim the entertainment, and I the clubs. And so we bring the beach to the apartment. If we can't go to the beach, we bring the beach to us. It's just how we do.
It's not about where you're at. It's the difference you bring. Get a fresh take on things. Club is brewed longer for easier drinking. Brewed slower for great taste. Club, tastefully different. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18.
Excuse me, what is this 300 shillings on my bill for?
That is for the tinted candles, madam.
And this 100 shillings?
That is for the air conditioning.
And this 200 shillings?
For the blue walls, ma'am.
I can't believe this!
Why pray for what you don't use or ask for? That's why we at Standard Chartered are introducing the Easy Go account, the first current account of its kind that gives you complete control of your banking charges. For more details, visit a Standard Chartered branch or call 0414 340077.
Would you like to leave me a tip, please?
Hello, Auntie PC, my way. Actually, I'm at the beach having fun. You know, I have 3 calls. I'm basically recording everybody. But don't get afraid, Auntie PC. I'm going to get back to you. Oh, answer rendezvous. Yeah, my way. Actually, I'm calling everybody. Don't get off. I will get back to you. Oh, Muzei, I've just forgotten what I wanted to tell you, but remain on right. As soon as I remember, I'll get back to you. Yeah, my way. MTN.
Enjoy free MTN weekend calls. Load a total of 2,000 shillings or more between Monday and Friday. Dial *188# to activate free MTN weekend calls.
MTN. Everywhere you go.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. What is Parliament doing about the human rights situation in the country, considering numerous reports that all is not well? Our guest tonight is Honorable Jovah Kamateeka, Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights, Ms. Margaret Sekagya, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders, and Executive Director of the Human Rights Centre-Uganda. You two will be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Honorable Sekagya, this new committee in Parliament that Honorable Kamateeka chairs, how useful is it going to be for people like you and few other people in the civil society, movement?
From its mandate, we know that it will deal with the public, but it will also deal with civil society. It will deal with different stakeholders. So we do collaborate with this committee, especially on complaints of violations of human rights, but we also work with it. For example, today we organized a training for the committee, for members of the committee, on a rights-based approach, a human rights-based approach to legislative drafting. looking at the issues which the committee should take into account before legislating. The issue of consultation with civil society, with other stakeholders before a law is passed, the issue of holding government accountable, the issue of transparency, and we also looked at what should a good legislation bring. And a good legislation should look at issues of legality. Is the law which is being passed legal? Is it necessary?
Is it in line with the Constitution?
Is it in line with the Constitution? Does it comply with international standards? We look at the issue of necessity. Is a law necessary? Do we have all the time to pass laws, or we can do with the laws which we have and the general laws within the Constitution? We look at the issue of proportionality, the issue of non-discrimination. Whenever you pass a law, you have to look at those issues. How does it affect vulnerable groups? Are you taking into account those issues? So it was a good training in collaboration with the Human Rights Center and the committee. We did this training. So instances like that, we do the capacity building, we work together, but we know that they will also take up our reports. When we write them, we raise issues. Besides the reports of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, they can look at reports of civil society and see what is the situation in the country. Right. What does civil society say? What does the media say? So we do expect that they will have a broader outlook on the situation of human rights in the country from the various angles.
No. All right. Honorable Kamateeka, talk to us about the kind of interfaces you expect to have with the general public, the media, and civil society.
First of all, the public must know that we in Parliament, or this Committee of Human Rights, acts as their voice. We are their voice in Parliament, and so they should come up and use us, feed us with information, and work with us, and trust us that we shall indeed voice their concerns. Civil society, let me take this opportunity to thank the civil society organizations that we have so far interacted with, like the Center for Human Rights Uganda, which is headed by Mrs. Sekagya, and others like Foundation for Human Rights Initiative and others.
Black Monday movement.
I haven't interacted with the Black Monday movement, but there are those that have come up to support us. We are working with them. They first of all realized that we needed to build capacity of the members of the committee to be able to analyze the business of Parliament, to analyze it for human rights compliance. And so they have organized training workshops, and where we have organized our own workshops, we have called upon them to come and facilitate. So we've been working together in this regard, and indeed we'll continue to work together, because the civil society organizations have, first of all, they have access to funding, and they can carry out research and reach deep within the areas of society where we can't. So we expect that they will feed us with information, and we expect that they also feed information to the Uganda Human Rights Commission, so that information that information comes through as recommendations of the Human Rights Commission, and then Parliament can act on them. But we are looking forward to continued and to widening actually the relationship and the collaboration with civil society.
You're deepening it. Yes. Madam Secretary, talk to us about the redress. You have standards of observation of human rights the world over. You have benchmarks. Talk to us broadly about redress. If someone finds their rights have been abused, the government could issue a statement apologizing. What happens after that? Is there a chance of redress?
We have different methods of getting redress. First of all, here in Uganda, we have what we call redress at the national level. You can have redress at the regional level and redress at the international level. And there are mechanisms which are put in place, like we have the courts, for example, as I said, anyone aggrieved or whose rights have been violated can go to a court of law and bring an action where he would be compensated or rehabilitated. Any order could be made for compensation. You could go to the Human Rights Commission or any other committee. Now we even have the Equal Opportunities Commission. All those avenues for addressing issues at the local level. The IGG looking at corruption and addressing the situation. At the regional level, we have the African Charter, which establishes the African Commission, and there people can bring up issues, and you could be able to bring up, to make a report to the African Commission, and it could give its own decision on the matter. Of course, they established the African Court also, which will take up cases so long as the state accepts or allows that case to be taken up. At the international level, we have the United Nations, and you have different mechanisms. You have treaty bodies which look at state reports which come up and people can lodge their reports there. You have the special procedures, and that's one of the mandate I hold as UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders. And you can bring a case to the United Nations, to the Special Rapporteur, who can, if there have been violation, issue a communication against the government to be able to ask that government to take action and give redress. And the Special Rapporteur does work in different ways, including even carrying out country visits to go and find out the situation on the ground. It also goes into detail of writing thematic reports on issues which have happened, issuing press releases so that we could be interviewed and be able to bring out the situation in that particular country. But we bring the issues at the United Nations, at the Human Rights Council, and tell the whole world what's happening in the country. We go to the General Assembly through the Third Committee and bring up these issues, and then the country could be, questioned by its members, by the members of the Human Rights Council or the General Assembly, about what measures it's taking regarding the violations and what sort of redress it's going to give. So all those are mechanisms at the national level, regional level, and at the international level, which I think people need to know and be able to utilize.
All right, and very briefly before we come back to Honorable Kamateeka, on a day-to-day basis, how does the average person interface with these agencies? You have big offices in Kampala, you are at the UN, you go to Geneva today, Burundi tomorrow, and other places. How does the average person interface with the human rights defenders?
At the local level,
apart from joining them in the Black Monday movement.
At the local level, the ordinary person, as I said, can go to the Uganda Human Rights Commission and lodge a complaint. If he has a bit of money, get a lawyer and go to court. Go to a civil society, lodge a complaint, like at the Human Rights Centre. We can listen to them. If we can't deal with the issue, we can refer it to the appropriate authority, or we can give advice. So those are at the local level. At the regional level, there are organizations, civil society organizations, which are conversant with how to deal with these issues and can assist the ordinary person. At the international level, we want to appeal to people that these mechanisms are for everyone, and people should learn how to lodge complaints directly to these organizations, to these institutions at the UN, by sending information internationally to Geneva, to the UN. Send an email, send a letter. Yes.
right. Honorable Kamateeka, how do you intend to bridge that gap, break the disconnect between these big agencies and ordinary people, especially in the north? Yes, town I won't name, now this is box the journalist. Where does that person go? He won't go to police because sometimes police might not be able to help them. Where can they go? They don't have to go to police.
First of all, they should go to the police. Yeah, because the police is not just one man. And we have to. This is what I was saying earlier, that we must create.
The journalists in northern town and damages tape recorder.
There are human rights defenders in the area, and so this person can run to them, and the information will be picked. I cannot say call the Human Rights Committee of Parliament, unfortunately, because that is not a procedure. But they can approach the human rights defenders. They can approach the area MP.
Yes, that's a reality. The area MP, you could have hotline
the area member of Parliament. Yes, and but they can also call the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and they can also petition the Speaker of Parliament.
Some of these are ordinary people in the village. They get the water from the well.
Yes. So every member of Parliament,
they can go to the area MP.
Yes, because we are in touch.
Because that's very costly.
I beg your pardon?
The LC system, would they know this, how these institutions are structured?
Yes, indeed, they should go to the LC system. I mentioned all this because you said it is the RDC.
He boxed the journalist. I won't mention the time.
Yeah. But if it is the local person, then the local person should go to the area LC.
And the area LC should be able to, take it up.
Yes.
Up to until it gets to your
absolutely
offices. So, listeners, this is Spectrum already, and you can call him now. Our number 0414 348 111 0312 260390 0312 261390. You call in, please tell us your name and your call. Where are you calling from? The numbers again 0414 348 111 0312 260390 0312 261390. Madam Sekagya, when you talk about redress, there was a cry or an appeal that individual officers or government representatives meeting out, these abusers should be held personally liable. Does that still stand? All right, let's hear another question from a caller this time. Spectrum, hello. Hello, okay. Madam Sekagya, talk to us. What happens to those people who meet out these abusers? Is there going to be personal liability at some stage?
Yes, of late they passed the Anti-Torture Act, which brings in personal liability to a person who violates or tortures a person, because, as you know, previously any person who even violated rights in the course of his employment, the Attorney General was always answerable, was liable on behalf of the government. But now that Anti-Torture Act, which came in, brings in personal liability, and I think it's a good move that this will be a deterrent to errant people who carry out these actions, that they can be personally prosecuted, be personally made liable for their actions.
Is it going to be carried out in practice?
Of course, it was opposed by the police. If you remember, when they were discussing, they argued a lot against it. But I think it should work. It should, just like anyone is prosecuted for an offense, that's also a particular liability for that particular officer or person to be prosecuted. I think we should implement the laws when we pass them, and that's one law I think should be implemented.
Let's talk about the practicality of it, specifically for the police. They do that all the time. Well, on occupational hazard, they could stretch it sometimes. Does it make sense to hold them personally liable, a police lifespan on duty?
I think especially for cases of torture.
Well, it could be a slip. In the course of carrying out their duties, they exceed the limit. Maybe not as a rule, but it could happen. Is it fair to hold them accountable? They might not be able to do their job in the end.
Well, I wouldn't decide that. I would let the courts look at the facts of the case to see how does that apply to the officer. Did he do it by accident, or did he have the intention of causing that harm? So that's why it should go to the courts for the courts to be able to decide that.
Honorable Kamateeka, what's your view there? Some policemen might fail to do their work. They could get paralyzed or the fear of the law in the end.
I do not think the police will be paralyzed. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, the Inspector General of Police has urged them that whatever they do, they should do it within the confines of the law. And I actually sit on the Legal and Parliamentary Committee, and General Kale Kayihura appeared in the committee and presented his views on this anti-torture bill, and he was in support of the bill. So, as
the video officers should be held liable.
Yes.
Not the divisional commander or RPC or whatever.
No, it should be individual officers. And as has already been said, even for all government officers, we always say that to err is human, but each one is personally liable for the mistakes that they make. And when you make those mistakes in the course of duty, then people will ask, was it intentional? And they'll be able to tell, was it intentional, or was it an accident, sort of? Did someone just act at the heat of the moment because they were provoked, or did they do it in self-defense, or did they do it intentionally? And as Mrs. Sekagya has said, the court should be able to determine that. But the police will be able to do their work, and this is what we want, that they do it within the confines of the law.
Spectrum, there seems to be a fault to those lines. They're going to be rectified, and then you should be able to call into this discussion. Madam Sekagya, let's look at other countries. How do we rate with regard to other countries? Are we number one? We're number one on many fronts. How do we rate? Are we high up there in the observance of human rights in East Africa, in Africa, globally?
I don't know whether I can do the rating.
You come from the UN, the United Nations.
Where the UN doesn't do ratings. What I must say that within Africa now, especially the situation as it is on the ground now in Africa, for example, the Arab Spring has caused a lot of sufferings and a lot of issues within the North Africa and Middle East countries. And I think as we look at the news, what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Egypt, what's happening in Libya, we still have quite a lot of challenges which are very, very serious. What's happening in Mali, you can see that, it's a very, very serious situation within the African region. But I think we shouldn't just say we are better off than the others, or this is what we should say is, how do we improve on the situation which is pertaining in our country? Because any violation is a violation, and any violation affects your people. So whether your people are suffering less than people in Syria, you still have to address the issues in your country which the people are crying for. And here in Uganda, people are crying about fighting corruption, for instance. They are crying about impunity. They are crying about police brutality when arresting people. They are crying about non-action by government in many instances. So I'm saying we should say, what should we
of the internet in my courtyard? The internet access is a human rights. I'm supposed to get internet access back from the government. That's a human rights abuse when I don't get it.
access to the...
What I'm trying to bring up, how do we draw the line? You said you can't compare human rights abuses one country with another. How do you draw the line? Some people say Uganda is not that badly off. It's worse in other places. Somalia, Liberia.
That's why I say it's worse in some of those countries, but still, the government has the responsibility of addressing the issues in our own countries, yes, and listening to the voices of the people and saying what do the people in Uganda want, what do they say about the issues.
Madam Kamateeka, some people will think that if you really stretch it, you'll make the government incapable of governing. Well, if you stretch it, you keep saying human rights, this human rights, that they might fail to contain government. You've heard about the Arab Springs. She's just been talking about Arab Springs. If you stretch it, people will demonstrate and go to State House.
No, sir, I do not agree. I do not agree. I think we need to develop respect for one another. That even if you are the police and you are carrying out your duties, you need to have respect for the other fellow human being. And we in Parliament, for example, take exception to the treatment of the police.
Opposition politicians.
No, okay, maybe opposition politicians, especially
I want you to name
the women.
The houses have been surrounded and they have to live through I don't know whether they fly or somehow they live.
You put that word in my mouth, but we wouldn't want anybody's rights to be abused. If they've done something wrong and they are members of the opposition, let them be handled within the law. And as I was saying, we take exception to the way the police has been handling women. You saw how they arrested the police women who were demonstrating, and the other cases of Ingrid and others. And as mothers of this nation, we take exception.
What are we going to? What can we expect to do if a certain politician, a certain individual's house is surrounded for a long time, or that person, or somebody gets arrested all the time, released in the evening, arrested in the morning, released in the evening, they can't even take public meetings. What can we expect from a bigger statement or something?
I think that is not what the committee is expected to do, but we will.
Of the High Court.
Yes, we do.
Order these policemen away.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we will not keep silent to any violations of human rights. But we are also mindful of letting other players do their part.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we will draw the attention of government to such abuses of human rights and act as a voice to those people.
It's common in the rural areas, especially for policemen to arrest people on charges that don't even exist. Sedition, for instance, publication of false news for the media, but even ordinary people, they've been arrested for non-existent offenses. Some of them were struck off the salary books a long time ago.
In that case, it should be the Uganda Human Rights Commission to first investigate these cases, and then we will act on their recommendations. But people can get to us through their members of parliament.
They can approach their MPs,
yes,
and then you will be able to do something.
Yes.
All right, Honorable Madam Sekagya, what do we expect to see in the next 3 years, looking at that trend now? Human rights abuses will be zero. History, think of the past in this country.
I think what we've seen progressing now is the emergency of institutions, civil society, the Human Rights Committee, the Human Rights Defenders Desk, and the Uganda Human Rights Commission. We have these institutions. What we want to see, I don't know whether it will happen, is ensuring that what is put in place is functional, is working, is to the expectation of the people. And again, we need to see a government which is tolerant and accepting susceptible to various views and not getting very sensitive about what other people, what the contrary views are in the community. So what I would like to conclude is we want to see democracy grow in Uganda.
We'll have to go. Thank you very much, dear guest, Honorable Jovah Kamateeka, Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Human Rights. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, Madam, today. Ms. Madam Margaret Sekagya, UN Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights Defenders, Executive Director of the Human Rights Centre-Uganda. We apologize we've not been able to get in these past 2 days on the lines. They've been faulty. They are going to be rectified, so you should be able to get in tonight, tomorrow when we get back here. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. So Spectrum will be back tomorrow.
There are those who sit around waiting for things to happen, but then there are those who make things happen. Take a closer look. While some people follow trends, there are those who set